Um, I know Kay, I know we've closed a deal together, but Jonathan and Theodore, have you guys actually received a title commitment that you've had an opportunity to look at before?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so title insurance, a lot of people say, what is title insurance and why do we need it? Title insurance protects the ownership of your property. Title insurance protects the owner from past errors related to ownership history or title to the property. Unlike like a homeowner's policy protects them for future events, title insurance protects them from past events. Um, One of the typical questions that we get is why should you have title insurance? The best way to explain that is to basically, a title policy is your customer's guarantee that the home you're buying is protected from any covered title problems, any prior encumbrances, anybody coming back stating that they have some sort of vested interest in the property and they didn't get paid what they should have gotten paid, or they were an heir that was left out because someone had passed away. So there's lots of benefits to title insurance. So what is a title commitment? Let me get this going here. I don't have a mouse, so I'm not very. Okay. What is a title commitment and why do I need it? So I'm going to skip past this because I just talked about that. So this is a good slide here as far as advantages to title insurance and how does a realtor explain title insurance. I don't know if you guys have had a customer that has said, well, why do I have to pay for that, especially a seller? Because most of the time the seller is going to pay your owner's title policy. The owner is guaranteeing title to their new buyer, that they're passing a property that's free and clear, but the title insurance is going to protect your buyer in case that's not true or in case something comes up later. This is a good example of situations that could pose a problem in title down the road. False impersonation of the true owner of the property. So forgery of a document, which we have seen. Fraudulent or forged deeds, releases or wills, undisclosed or missing heirs. Instruments executed under invalid or expired power of attorneys. A lot of people will say, hey, I have a power of attorney for my grandma, but grandma passed away 2 years ago. Well, you can't be power of attorney for someone who's no longer living.
Yeah.
So, power of attorneys are only good if that person is still alive and they still agree to let you be their power of attorney. Mistakes in recording of legal documents, misinterpretations of wills, deeds by person of unsound mind. I can't go to a nursing home to have someone execute seller's documents and sign a deed conveying a property to your buyer if I go in and feel like that person is of unsound mind and they don't know what they're signing. In the event that I did go into a nursing home and I did that, and my decision was she was of sound mind, and we closed on that transaction, and later on one of her heirs or her kids or her sister, someone comes back and says, hey, y'all closed on my sister selling her house, but she didn't know what she was signing. That's a good example of what a claim could be, because they could come back and open up a claim and say, hey, we didn't want that house to be sold. She didn't know that's what she was doing, and you guys closed on it, and she didn't know what she was doing. So that's another good example of where title insurance would come into play. Minors cannot sign deeds. Under the age of 18, they are obviously not considered an adult and they cannot sign a deed. So if you ever have a deal that's going with a minor, and where that usually comes into play is grandma or grandpa pass away and they leave the property to their grandkids, but their grandkids are obviously under the age of 18. So those grandkids, yes, they're entitled, but they can't sign a deed transferring title. They have to have what they have called a guardianship until they are the age of 18. So that has to go through the courts. So if I let a minor sign a deed at the age of 16 selling, that's an invalid deed. It's not good. So these are just some good reasons if you guys ever get a question of why do I have to have title insurance or why do I have to pay for it? These are some good examples that you can give people of why title insurance is important and why they need it. So I will move on to what is a title commitment. So a title commitment that you receive from me or any other title company is the written agreement guaranteed by a title company committing said company to issue title insurance on a specific property once certain requirements have been met. Those requirements is what is outlined on your title commitment. So guys, it's very important when you get a title commitment that you actually look at them. A lot of times, you know, people don't, you know, every escrow officer is different. Every closer is different. If I send out a title commitment, if there's something on there that I really need you to look at or understand what's going on, I'm going to point that out to you, but I can't speak for everybody else as far as other closers and what they do. So it's important that you guys know what you're looking at to know what you're up against on your property. Let's see here. Okay, who has a copy of the packet? Jonathan, you did, but Theodore, you didn't?
No, ma'am.
Kay, did you have one?
No, I did not pick one up.
Okay, that's all
Sorry,
right.
but I'll do it. I have to go pick up a check, so it'll give me a reason to
Okay,
go.
so how can I show them me? Can I not if I'm sharing my screen?
You would have to.
All I see is your name, Kim. So your show your video. Click the button that says start video at the bottom if you've got that.
Oh wait, start video. Oh,
There
now
you are.
Can y'all see me?
Yes.
Hi. Okay, so Schedule A, I'll try to get it up here, is the very, you know, first page of your title commitment when you guys receive it from us. So what the Schedule A is going to go over is obviously your GF number, the effective date of the title commitment. So the effective date and the actual issue date of the title commitment are always going to be different because our title plants don't run on the actual date. Title plants run about 7 days behind the county. So if somebody recorded something against a property that you're selling 3 days ago and I pull a title commitment today, I'm not going to see what they recorded. That's why before we close on every transaction, we do what we call a bring to date on our title commitment that tells us if anything has happened in that 30 or 60 days that title has been opened. Okay. And this is also the page here where you want to look right down here, and this is where it's going to tell you who your vested owner is. So if you get this title commitment and Sally Joe is your seller, but John Smith is on this title commitment, that should be your first red flag that what's wrong? Why is my seller not showing on our title commitment? And then right underneath your vesting on Schedule A, you're going to have the legal description to your property. That's also important to make sure that those are double checked, which we double check them as well when they come into the contract that you've submitted to us, but making sure that you have the correct property, the lot, the block, you know, do you have that designated out correctly in your contract? And is there something that you missed or a lot that you didn't know about? So that's important to look at as well. The next schedule is going to be Schedule B, and you'll see that right. I'm trying to see where the camera is. It'll say Schedule B right here at the top. Now, Schedule B is what we call your exceptions from coverage. So these are things that are not going to be covered on the title insurance policy. Okay. So you guys know that I didn't bring that page of the contract. On page 2 of the contract, you know, where it talks about yes, I want, or no, I don't want the survey coverage. You know, do you know what I'm talking about on page 2 of the contract? Are y'all there? Hello?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
So,
we're here.
yeah, so this part I like to point out because a lot of people don't realize what that part of the contract and how it relates to the title commitment. So on page 2 of the contract where you mark no, buyer does not want coverage, or yes, buyer does want coverage, and who's going to pay for it, this is where they're talking about. So on my slide here where it says Schedule B, the second the second dot down, any discrepancies, conflicts, and shortages in area or boundary lines, or any encroachments or protrusions, or any overlapping of improvements. So you will see here on my title commitment, number 2 is the exact same language. That is going to be on every title commitment that you get, regardless of the title company that you use. So when that box on page 2 of the contract is marked that yes, the buyer does want coverage, that this is what it's pertaining to. So when their title policy comes out, all of that language on that second dot right here that you're looking at on Schedule B, any discrepancies, conflicts, shortages in area, boundary lines, all of that is taken out. So they now have coverage for all of those things, except for shortages in area. Shortages in area will always remain on Schedule B as an exception, because shortage in area is referring to square footage of the home, and we do not insure against square footage. But all of those other things get lined out on the policy. So now your buyer has coverage for any discrepancies in boundary lines or any encroachments or protrusion or any overlapping improvements. They now have title insurance coverage for those. If you mark no that your buyer does not want that on your contract, then it stays as is, like on this screen. So they do not have coverage for those things. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Your HOA verbiage will show on Schedule B. And then obviously any building lines, any easements, it's gas pipelines, City of Houston requirements, all those will always be listed on Schedule B as exception to the title coverage. Schedule C is what I would say is the most important part for you to look at, because this is where it's going to tell you any mortgages that are on the property, any liens that are on the property, and any requirements that we have as a title company that we have to clear to be able to close that transaction. So here is where it's going to list if we have a name search requirement, you know, like for me, my maiden name is Brown. So the last name Brown is obviously very common. So it could be on there that we have to have what we call a statement of information with all of your customers' personal information, social security number, driver's license, date of birth, because we have to go pull any liens that come up against a Casey Brown and make sure that they're not the same person, okay? The title commitment that is in your packet does have what we call a name search requirement on here. And I'm trying to find the number. So we have number 8. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it comes up and it's requiring that we have a statement of information for a name search. So most of you know, like when we open up a transaction, we send out the statement of information to all buyers and all sellers to go ahead and gather that information in the beginning. So then if we come up with this on the title commitment, then we can go ahead and weed out what we need to weed out, okay? Sometimes we can't clear everything because we don't have social security numbers or driver's license numbers. And then we'll get with you and your client and find out if it is them, if it's not them. If it's not them, then we do what we call a not same person affidavit at closing, and we move on. If it is them, then we go in a different direction of addressing those liens or judgments to pay them off. The Schedule C is where it's going to list any mortgage loans, mechanics liens, tax liens, homeowners association liens, judgments, federal tax liens. It's also going to go over any wills or probates. If you have a party that's deceased, what our requirements will be in order to clear or to put the vested owners in for heirs or probates. It's going to show any divorces, statement of information requirements, and in payment of any HOA dues or if there's any HOA liens. So Schedule C is our go-to on every transaction of what title is saying we have to do before we can actually close that deal and issue a title policy. Make sense? You got it?
I follow you. Yes.
Follow me? And Schedule D is the last page of the title commitment. It's just a regulatory disclosure of the officers of the title company and underwriter. It's signed by everybody for what premiums we're going to charge. You know, one thing in the state of Texas that is a little bit different than other states is we are regulated by the Texas Department of Insurance. So it does not matter what title company you close at in the entire state of Texas. The sales price determines the title insurance policy, and wherever you go, the title insurance premium is going to be the same. Like we don't get to up them between the title companies. We don't get to play that game of I'm going to charge less than you. It's the same wherever you go. The only thing that can change from title company to title company is your escrow/closing fee. And that is determined by the individual title companies, but the title policy is not. Okay. Oh, I'm going too fast. Back up. Obviously, I don't do PowerPoints very often, you guys. I work CDs, not PowerPoints. All right, we talked about that. So 4 C's of a title company: coordinate, cure, closing, and coverage. And off the top of your head, do you guys have any questions pertaining to a title commitment? Anything that you're curious, anything at all? Anything about title? Do you have any funky deals going on right now that you have a question about?
I just had one deal, and I didn't have this class before that, so I was looking at a lot of information.
Yeah, it is.
And it
is a lot. It is a lot of information.
This is good for me.
Yeah. You know, and somebody gets a title commitment emailed to them, and you're looking at it like, what am I supposed to do with this? Or how do I, it's a lot. Whether you have a deal with me or somewhere else or Kim or whatever, if you guys get something like a title commitment and you have a question, feel free to reach out to me. I mean, we'll help you look at it. We'll help you understand what's going on. If you have a customer that contacts you that says, hey, my mom passed away, we don't even know where to start, but we need to sell their house, or grandma or whoever, reach out to us. We'll walk you through it. You know, those can be pretty tricky deals when you're dealing with wills or heirship affidavits or probates or, you know, anything like that. So if you get a title commitment that you just are like, I need someone to explain this to me, reach out to us. We'll help you. It doesn't matter if it's ours or not.
Oh, okay. Nice.
We don't mind at all. Questions? I know that was a bit fast. I mean, you can't, it's really, you know, there's only so much to cover on a title commitment. But do y'all have any questions?
Yeah, so when you first sent out the title commitment, we would see if there was any liens or anything at the beginning. Am I correct?
Yes. So when the title commitment comes out to you, my suggestion is you look at Schedule A, make sure your seller is the right seller, and you look at Schedule C to see what's against your property. Okay. You know, if your seller has told you, oh yeah, you know, I have a mortgage on the property, you're going to see a mortgage on there. So, you know, you're fine. We're going to pay that off at closing. You know, they're telling you about that. You're looking for the things that aren't supposed to be there.
Yeah.
You know, my seller said, oh, I own that property free and clear, and you get a title commitment that's got 2 loans against it. Oh, okay. Well, where did those come from?
Or child support judgment.
Right. Child support judgment, HOA lien, you know, oh, we took that loan out for our pool, but we didn't know they were going to put that on the property. We just thought we were paying the pool company back. I mean, I could go on and on about things that I've heard as far as people not realizing that something was attached to their property.
Yeah.
You know, another thing that people don't realize is, like Kim just said, child support lien, or you have, you know, creditors, you know, someone didn't pay their Capital One credit card, or someone got a car repossessed 5 years ago and now they have a judgment lien against them. Well, as a seller, they have to pay that. You know, it's not against the property, but it's against them, and they have an equity interest in their property. You know, so those liens are going to show up, those judgments. They're not really liens at that point, they're judgments against them, and we're going to pull them. And if they're a match, they have to be addressed. You know, and a lot of times sellers will get upset about that because they're selling their house. It's not attached to their property, but it's attached to you.
So what happens, what if you have a buyer and say a situation like this, can the buyer get out of the contract and get their earnest money out if the seller doesn't want to pay or they just can't afford to?
Oh, you mean like if the seller has something against them that the buyer was that they didn't know about? Well, yes, because I mean, I got to be careful on what I say there because me not being a licensed real estate agent or
Yeah.
broker,
Yeah.
but the contract states that the seller has to provide them clear title.
Yeah.
If the seller can't provide them clear title and we can't close, that's no fault of your buyer,
Okay.
you know? So, and you know, there are times as well that a buyer will have a judgment against them. Maybe it was one from 10 years ago. But buyers are a little bit different than sellers because if your buyer's taking out a loan to buy the property, a purchase money deed of trust is going to take precedence over any judgment that they have out there against them.
Mhm.
So your buyer could have an old judgment against them, but that doesn't mean they can't close and buy the property or that they'll even be required to pay off the judgment to do so.
Mm.
Because what'll happen is they'll buy the property, then all that stuff will attach because now they own real property. Do you see what I'm saying?
Understood.
But their mortgage goes in what we call first position. So they take that mortgage takes precedence over whatever that outstanding judgment is. Unless you're talking about the IRS, that's a different ballgame. Because you know, they have privileges.
Yeah.
So trying to think anything else I can share with you. I talked to you about Texas. Who's responsible for payment of the owner's title policy? I'm sure you guys know it's all negotiable.
Yeah.
Everything's negotiable, but 99% of the time we see that the seller pays the owner's policy of title insurance. But it doesn't have to be that way. You know, you may have a seller that I'm not paying for anything, which we see that too, you know. So it's all negotiable, but typically the seller pays the title insurance policy. That's really it right now, guys. That's really all I've got. Come on, I need some more questions. Come
Probably
on, Kay, what do you
pertaining
got?
to divorces.
Go ahead.
Probably
Divorce?
pertaining to divorces.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah, because I know that's coming up on a common thing now.
yeah, so with divorces, you know, there's so many different aspects of that we can see. So, you know, an example would be, you know, me and my husband, Jason and Casey Lowe, we own a property together. We get a divorce. He gets the property in the divorce. So most of the time what you will see is the divorce decree will break that down. The divorce decree will state that Jason Lowe was awarded the property at this address and the wife is divested of all rights, title, and interest. That's the language that we're looking for when we look at a divorce decree. We're looking that the other spouse who did not get the property was divested of all rights, title, and interest. As long as that specific verbiage is in there and it's very clear as to who got the property, then we're generally fine. You know, now sometimes you'll get into situations where, hey, maybe my husband got the property in the divorce, but upon the sale of the property, he's got to pay me $50,000. So that has to be addressed at closing. You know, we have to pay the spouse, or if he's already paid the spouse, then the spouse has to provide us proof that she's already been paid. Because when they do that, when they leave an amount to the other spouse or certain stipulations, if it's a dollar amount, it creates a lien because she's owed money, right? Like I'm owed money if he sells that house. So we would pay the spouse off and then the spouse would sign a release of lien. That way everybody's clear. Going back to the title insurance, where the buyer who's getting the property, this wifey poo over here can't come back and say, I didn't get my 50 grand when this title insurance company closed. Someone owes me money.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes people they don't like us to look at their divorce decrees. Sometimes they're funny about, you know, us giving them to us, but the fact of the matter is we have to have them if they've gotten a divorce. You know, even in a situation, another good question is people will say, well, I bought my house prior to getting married. I got married and now I'm divorced. So why does that wife matter? Well, technically, they owned it prior to marriage, so it is separate property. But we're going to ask for a copy of that divorce decree because how do we know what's in it? What if that spouse had given $20,000 to put on a new roof? So what if the divorce decree said, the property's not mine, but I want my $20,000 back?
Yeah.
You know, so that tends to be a touchy situation too, because they're like, well, I owned it prior to being married. Well, that's great and all, but we've got to know what the divorce decree said. As long as there's nothing in the divorce decree that says anything like that, then we're fine. It doesn't necessarily have to say that they got the property because they owned it prior to marriage. We just have to make sure that there's no stipulations in there that spouse gets any kind of monetary upon the sale of the property.
Gotcha.
So they're all a little bit different. You know, you'll never have one transaction, one divorce, one deceased person. You'll never have any that are the same, you know, which for me is what makes it interesting. But and if you get into a situation where you have a deceased person and you're dealing with that, you know, you definitely want the title company holding your hand. I don't care if you've done it 1 or if you've done it 10 times, because it's all different. It depends on how many kids they had, who they were married to, did they have a will, did they not have a will, you know, who died first, who died second. Like it's a puzzle. So you definitely want to have a title company and an escrow officer working with you to hold your hand and get you through every step that has to be gotten through on a situation like that. Because I will tell you that Texas beats to its own drum when it comes to that. It's like no other state. Y'all good?
Yep.
Miss K,
It
no
was
questions?
interesting. So
No questions for me, Miss K?
no,
No.
you did good. And they did good asking questions, so I didn't have to.
Yes, they did. I'm still not used to the Zoom thing. I'm used to standing in front of y'all and mingling and talking and pointing and all that good
I know,
stuff.
someday.
I know.
Someday we'll get back to normal.
Yes, we will. At least I don't have to wear a mask in here.
Yeah.
Except at the
A
closing.
mask on Zoom.
Right? Well, that's like
Oh, I'm sure people do it.
Okay, but what about the ones I'm sorry, I have to say this. What about the ones driving down the street and they're in the car by themselves and they have their mask on?
They're getting ready for their next destination. That's what it is.
Nobody even in the car.
I don't understand it.
I walk
I know.
outside of a store and that's the first thing that comes off. Like step foot out and it comes off my face.
Oh, exactly. Get into that fresh air and
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. Well, guys, it was a pleasure. I hope you learned a little something today. Not an extremely long class, but if you guys have any questions or you ever get stuck on anything, you can call me or Kim anytime. We're always here for you.
Perfect.
appreciate it. Thank
You
you.
have the number?
My number is 281-938-1300. And I'm not Kim, even though it says I'm Kim. I'm Casey.
Gotcha.
Oh, apparently my information is on the last page. Oh, there you go.
Oh, there we go.
Yay.
But I do have to say, Casey, y'all helped so much on my Carlo house
Oh, thank
with the
you.
Hannings. That one was just, whatever.
Yep. Well, hopefully
Nothing
your
to do with
next one is-
title. I mean, it was all the lender. So,
Yeah. You know, that's
Yeah.
just, I wish I could say that I'm not seeing that a lot right now, but I am, you know.
they're just, everyone is so busy. And I
Yep.
really feel like with theirs, the lender just got overwhelmed and they had to pick and choose who they could finish. And ours was
Yeah.
a lower dollar loan. And they said, well, we'll just drop them and take the higher dollar one. I don't know.
I feel like what you're saying is true. I think the lenders are so everybody is so inundated right now with loans and, you know, I'm sure short-staffed, people can't hire, you know, I mean, there's just so many factors
Right.
playing into what we do now that it's just, you know, used to you had a handful of lenders that when you saw them, you'd crawl under the desk, and now it's just, you know, and it's not, I'm not saying they're bad, you know, no, it's not anybody's bad. They're just, everybody's so busy.
Well, I don't know. If I saw that one lender, I would crawl under my desk.
Yeah, you probably would.
So, because it was just,
Little
you know,
buyers,
why
they
could,
got in, and that
they
was
did.
great.
So, but it had to have been a problem with the lender if, you know, 3 weeks later, they could close with another lender with no problem.
Yes, you're
Oh, I
absolutely
know.
right. You're absolutely
So-
right.
Anyway, it was just a little nail biter for the listing agent though, because,
Yes.
you know,
Well, hey,
somebody
you
had to
know.
close, so somebody could close, so somebody could close. And anyway, but it all worked out.
Well,
And
I'm so
everybody's
glad
happy.
that it did. And thank y'all for
Yes.
joining the class. And like I said, I'm always here if you have any questions. Reach out to me anytime. I'll help you with
Thank
anything
you.
I can.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, y'all have a good day.
Bye, Jonathan.
you.
Bye, Theodore. Nice to meet you. Bye, Kay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.